Hi gang, Rob here. It's the evening of 8 August 2017. Just sitting out at the neighborhood pond on a gorgeous late summer evening in northeast Indiana. You can barely hear the cicadas in the distance. There's barely any breeze. Look at the reflection off that water. It's just gorgeous. In tonight's video, I'm going to show you 3 knives. And this story is really not about the knives. The subject matter of tonight's video is about human relationships, rites of passage, things being passed from one generation to the next, the fellowship engendered by the knife community, and the craft of making knives. Pretty cool stuff. Before I cut to the sharpening bench to show you the knives we're looking at, I want to tell you a little bit about how I got them, how they came to be on the channel. About 3 years ago, I got a knife in to sharpen from a 12-year-old young man in Washington State. It was his father's knife, and his father was about to have a birthday, and this young man had saved money to pay to have his dad's knife sharpened for his birthday, and he had saved this money by harvesting chickens' eggs and selling them. Well, I was happy to help out with that project, and this young man named Paul kept in touch, and a few months later I got a message from his mother telling me that he was about to turn 13, and in their family the 13th birthday for a young man is a rite of passage. It's a significant birthday, and it's marked in time as a graduation to manhood. And she asked if I would write Paul a letter for his birthday. I ended up getting sick and I wasn't able to do that. But I did have my 5,000 subscriber giveaway coming up right after Paul's birthday in the fall of 2014. And he was one of the winners. And the knife that Paul won was a Northwoods fixed blade donated by Derek Bone at Knives Ship Free. It was a knife made by Bark River, and Paul was a happy recipient of that knife. And well, now he's almost 16, 15 years old. He was 12 when we first made contact. Well, I got a voicemail message a couple of weeks ago and a couple missed calls from Washington. And I didn't listen to the voicemail message, but I did finally get in touch with Paul. It was he who was calling. And what he wanted was to tell me that he had made 3 fixed blade knives, his first 3, and he wanted to send them to me so I could give him some feedback, some constructive criticism. And man, he told me this is Paul MacDuff from Washington, and I said, is this Paul MacDuff that won my contest 3 years ago? He said, yes. And I was just bowled over that he would call and that he would want my input on his knives. So not only did I receive them, and not only have I given Paul some feedback, but I also offered to sharpen them, which he took me up on, and then included money, which I really didn't ask him to do. He's offered to let me keep one of these 3 knives, which I will do happily, not because of any monetary value, but because this is a special situation, a special story. So we're going to look at those knives for the rest of this video, but I just want you guys to know this is why I make YouTube videos, for these rare moments in time. A young man who I will probably never meet, although I'd like to get him to a grind-in at Bark River, has developed, by his own reaching out, a relationship with me that is priceless. And it's so good to see a young man coming of age and endeavoring to be part of creating in his generation his version of the oldest tool known to man. This is what it's all about, guys. It's about the passing of knowledge, skill, wisdom, insight from one generation to the next. Not that I have much wisdom to give, but I'm just glad to be part of it and glad to be able to share it with you. So here we go. Here are Paul's 3 knives. Let's look at them closely. And guys, in the comments, I want you to help. I want you to help give Paul some pointers. He made it very clear to me he did not want this to be a love fest. He wants to know how he can become a better knife maker. I'm probably going to be biased in their favor and his favor, but let's take a look at these knives now. I think you'll agree this is pretty special stuff. So here we go. Okay guys, you ready? Let's look at some knives. First, from Paul MacDuff, is this Kephart. 1095 steel, made from 3/32 stock. As finished, it's just a hair under 90 thousandths thick right here at the tang. The primary bevel grind, the face of the blade, is ground at about 3 degrees per side, and it came in with no edge on it at about 21 thousandths behind the edge, and it's sharpened at 17 degrees per side. And I want you to pay special note, this is a 15-year-old freehand grinding. Look at the width of the bevel from tip to hilt, and it is staggeringly consistent. The thinnest points in the blade are right at the tip and right at the base of the edge. It gets a little fatter right through this main straight portion, but all in all, very good. Queen Cutlery could take grinding lessons from this young man. He has finished this knife in all 3 with a horizontal satin. It's not perfect, but it's pretty doggone nice. I think the Kephart came out the nicest of the 3. And this is something Paul and I discussed on how to get a uniform satin. Now, I like this knife for one huge reason. I guess the Kephart is, what, 100-year-old pattern-ish, and it was very specifically designed and specified by Horace Kephart. A blade between 4 and 5 inches in length, closer to 4 is better. No more than an 1/8 inch of stock, but 3/32 is preferable. That's exactly what we have here. A plain spear point blade suitable for lots of bushcraft tasks. Now, one area that Paul did get in the weeds a little bit on was the handle. And this is kind of a funny story. If you guys had ever talked to Paul, or if you knew him, you would know how modest and unassuming this young man is. But I said to him, what happened on the handle there, Paul, for the Kephart? Was the material not wide enough to encapsulate the self-guard in the handle material? That's kind of what I figured happened. His answer was, well, I kind of did notice that when I was looking at pictures after I was done, but my main concern if I did that is I wouldn't be able to fit my maker's mark on the blade. That's the only hint of ego or self-importance I've ever heard from this young man. I just had to chuckle when he said that. So obviously the handle on the Kephart should come right to the front of the self-guard, so the ricasso should only be maybe an 1/8 of an inch wide instead of a 1/2 an inch. Paul also got a little crazy with the sharpening notch on this one. Most Kepharts, the blade would, from the self-guard to the bottom of the cutting edge, would probably be about where his sharpening notch is. So he's used a little broader blade in relation to his handle height or breadth. and he's notched it. He asked me if I thought the sharpening notch was too big. Now, most traditional Kepharts would have no sharpening notch at all. They're so thin, and they come close to a 90-degree plunge, so a notch really wasn't used in older Kepharts. But certainly you could use something like that in a Kephart if you wanted. This notch, I think, looks a little ungainly. One other area that that Paul, I think, could use a little bit of practice on is his hafting. Finishing the handle and the tang of the blade. I don't know if the camera's going to pick this up too well, but on the spine of the blade, our satin finish is going lengthwise on the blade, and then at the handle it switches and goes perpendicular. He obviously finished his handle thusly. I don't know if this is going to be picked up too well, but the handles are a little crude, and this is probably more an equipment issue than a technique issue. I noticed that especially the steel in the tang is a little proud to the wood. That is a battle all new makers fight. How to remove material while hafting that doesn't make the softer cover material or handle scale material go away before the hardened steel. And I gave Paul a couple ideas on how to help that situation. But all in all, the pins are nicely fitted, well finished. There are no voids between pins and wood or wood and tang, just very well done. Just a nicely proportioned Kephart. I think the handle might be a little round, but it is, if you look at this direction, trying to focus down here on the handle, there are some flats and it's a little more oval, whereas at the butt it kind of ovals the other way. So it changes in proportion so that when this butt end is held against the palm it sits flat, and when you're pinch gripping the front of the handle it's hitting flat. So it's oblong 90 degrees from each other from front to back, which is good for a Kephart. I would like to see some squarer shoulders just to keep it from turning in the hand. But look at the wonderful consistency of that grind. It's not wavy, it doesn't vary in thickness. A really, really nice first effort. Notice how the plunge grind is very hard to see at the spine. It's barely undercut where the plunge grind starts. He almost gets it to zero at the spine. Nicely done. The reason I really like this Kephart is because Paul didn't make the mistake or commit the heresy that a lot of modern Kephart interpretive knife makers make. He didn't try to make the Kephart something it's not. He didn't use 1/4-inch stock. He didn't give it a Scandinavian grind. He sort of did his best to make the knife as it was intended to be. Obviously, a little bit of difficulty in this area of the knife, but all in all, a great effort. And one thing I need to mention is Paul did say that he got help from a custom knife maker in his hometown. I gotta tell you guys, whatever he did to heat treat this 1095 was really good. It did not give up easily when sharpening, and it takes a vicious edge. Watch out, Mr. Humphrey. Paul MacDuff is coming for you on his heat treat recipe. Really nicely done. So that's the Kephart, handled in Brazilian rosewood. A couple really nice pieces. a little higher polish would really make that stuff pop. So that's the Kephart. Next, let's look at, well, here's a Great Eastern Cutlery H20. And here's a Paul MacDuff interpretation of an H20. Pretty cool. A little straighter handle on Paul's knife. A little more taper in the GEC. And the knife is just a little bigger in every dimension. That height of the blade, I think, really makes it look great compared to the GEC original. This one also in 1095. Same 3/32 stock. This is, I think, a black linen micarta. Paul, if that's canvas, let me know, but it looks a little fine in texture. It looks more like linen. I should have asked you. Again, brass pin construction. Again, superbly ground. And on this knife, the only thing I'm going to really ding it for is that I did have to enlarge that sharpening notch. The plunge got a little lazy on this one. And it was a little thicker behind the edge at about 26 thousandths. The other two knives about 20 or 21. Notice on this knife, Paul's hafting is a little better. The satin is going along the blade with a little unfinished or no cleanup area right here. And then it's going to switch, as most makers will. No, it doesn't either. Sorry about that. It's longitudinal here also, just not finished quite as well. Nice handle shape. It is very secure in the hand. I might have wanted just a little more choil here. Of course, the GEC H20 emulates a muskrat clip blade in one of their pocket knives, so this would be the kick. And I could use a little more security with that choil in Paul's knife. But, you know, it's a small EDC fixed blade. Not going to be stabbing anybody with it. Again, the satin came out pretty doggone nice. Keep in mind, guys, as we're looking at these, Paul asked me to pick these knives apart, and he's 15 years old. These are the first three knives he's ever made. And my personal favorite of the three is this one. This is Paul's interpretation of the Bark River Ultralight Bushcrafter. Instead of being Scandi Vex, this is full flat ground. A super sexy drop point blade. Hashtag proper choil. More of that Brazilian rosewood on this handle. And coming in tight here, just a little bit of a rough hewn appearance going on at the front of that knife. And Paul, if you're watching, you always want to make sure that you finish the front of the handle before you attach it to the blade. I mean completely finished to whatever level of polish you desire. Just a little notchy up through here. And some nicer polishing equipment would go a long way to helping Paul's work. But this knife is just a beauty. 3-finger knife with the pinky sort of anchoring it all. Again, that same level of consistency, tip to hilt, in the thickness of the grind. So nice. I thought you guys would like to see these. And as I mentioned in the intro, anything that you see in these knives that you think Paul could do a little better and how would be an appreciated comment. So have at it. Let's help this young man blossom into a great knife maker. How about that? Isn't that good stuff? It's pretty neat that I actually have these knives in my possession just as I'm ready to head out for Titusville, Pennsylvania to the Great Eastern Cutlery Rendezvous. One of them is Paul's interpretation of a GEC fixed blade, so I can't wait to show that to Bill Howard and Randy Bell and the guys at GEC. I hope their hearts are warmed knowing that they've influenced a young knife maker. I know when I called Derek and told him that I had Paul's knives coming in, there was a catch in his throat, and he said, this is the kind of story that just brings tears to my eyes. He was so grateful to be a part of it. Next month I'll be going to Bark River for the September grind in, and I hope I still have one in my possession to show Mike Stewart at Bark River, because I think he's going to be pretty pleased with this story too. Thought I would share it with you guys tonight. I hope you enjoyed it. Grace to you and peace, my friends, from God our Father and the Lord Jesus Christ. And remember, the Word and the first 3 MacDuff knives are sharp.